to Steak Bites, where we carve out space for meaningful conversations that go beyond the grill. I'm Kara Smith, your host and fellow enthusiast of all things tasteful and fulfilling. At Steak Bites, we're all about beef, including how to get the most out of it. We're dedicating this episode to helping you elevate your beef cooking skills, whether it's grilling a steak to perfection or slow cooking a brisket. Eddy Frisk joins us today. He's an expert in backyard barbecue. He spent years refining the art of grilling and barbecue. He's been out to the ranch and he's seen where the beef starts and knows exactly how to bring the best out in every cut. Welcome, Eddy.
Thank you for the intro. I appreciate it. So my first podcast, and I really appreciate being on your podcast.
Well, we're glad to have you here, Eddy.
Thank you. When it comes to barbecue, I barbecue roughly 300 days out of the year. When it comes to barbecue, I started off like everybody else. Started off grilling and enjoying that first burn off of that propane cook, and cooking frozen hamburgers. And the truth is that that's what most people experience when they first start. The truth is that there is absolutely a separation or an elevation in your barbecue game, and an elevation in cooking. Finer cuts of meat, understanding flame and understanding barbecue is going to make your food a lot better. And I really enjoy every aspect of barbecue. I'll step back to the quality of meat. When it comes down to it, you are what you eat, literally. And when it comes down to it, you want to make sure that what you're eating is not processed. You want to make sure that it is not full of hormones or nasty chemicals that you don't want to be eating. And when you're thinking about your family and you're thinking about your friends and you're out there on the grill, it's important to have farm to table. The fact is you'll taste the quality and you'll taste the difference. I had the fortune of going to your ranch, and when it comes down to it, there is an amazing amount of care that goes from that animal being raised to the point where it's processed. And, it's a true testament to the quality of product that you guys deliver. And it's not even just the product that you guys deliver. The fact, the way that you guys do deliver it, you're conscientious about the environment, the packaging, the fact that you use recyclable materials, the fact that you use materials that will be biodegradable. Amazing. A true testament to people who actually care about what's going on in this world and making sure that they're giving a fair shake to the next generation. So with that, let's talk about barbecue.
Yeah, let's do, Eddy. I'd love to hear how you got into it first. Let's set the stage. What brought Eddy into backyard barbecue?
Fair. It all started off with Father's Day.
Okay.
My wife was saying, hey, you've been cooking on this nasty old grill for a while, and we replaced these nasty old grills for several years, and I'd like to get you a good grill for Father's Day. So I didn't let her have a second chance. I ran to the store and picked up a nice grill and brought it home, put it together, and me, like anybody else, I started off with lesser products. I started off grilling, and I made a ton of mistakes, to be quite honest with you. I burned my food. I used the wrong type of spices. I didn't understand how to control my heat. And it was a lot of mistakes in the beginning. But I kept on trying and persevering. My barbecue game got pretty good. I was able to host guests and cook some pretty amazing food. And then my wife came home one day and she said, hey, they're having this competition. And I was want to know if you wanted to take part in this competition. Truthfully, I'm a pretty humble guy and pretty shy, honestly. But I took it and said, hey, let's make this happen. But I'm also a guy that overreaches too. The fact is the meal that I made, it took me hours to prepare. And I cooked for several hundred people. I did not win, but on the other hand, I got a true respect for what you could do on a barbecue. Past that point, I started making some posts online, and I started getting a following. And then I was asked to be part of a professional barbecue team, Team Green of Big Green Egg. So now, today, I am doing anywhere between, so I cook 300 days out of the year on a grill, whether it be for small parties at my house, or I've done parties of 800 people, 2,500 people, and the largest was 20,000 people. So I do some pretty cool, amazing things and get to meet some really amazing people, such as yourself. So that's really the start as far as my grilling experience. Each different protein. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I love it. It's a way to set the stage, and maybe we could dive into beef specifically. As
Beef
far as like,
specifically.
your approach to bringing the best flavors out in beef. Maybe some misperceptions people have about grilling beef.
Okay, fantastic. So when it comes down to grilling beef, first and foremost is your product. Hands down, you got to know what you're getting. You have to look at the marbling of meat. You have to get an idea of when that meat was processed. Know what you're cooking. A lot of people will push towards Wagyu meat. However, Wagyu meat is extremely fatty, and the fact is you don't feel full after eating. You will initially, but within a half an hour, you're ready to go get a hamburger or what have you. The fact is that I'm a fan of Wagyu. If I'm going to eat every day, I'm not going to be eating that. Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of buzz to it, but the truth is you don't have a cessation of eating when you're eating that type of beef. So my next step is looking at where did that beef come from? Is it grass-fed? What's the marbling on that meat? But I'm pretty selective as far as what meat I'm going to choose. Truth is when it comes to grilling, thicker cuts are more forgiving. It depends on what you're cooking. If you're going to be cooking a hot and fast, you're going to be getting the thin cuts, your skirt steaks. Your thicker cuts are going to be your ribeyes, your tomahawks, and then your slow cooks are going to be your tougher cuts, like your briskets would be an example. Mm-hmm. That makes sense, or is that proper?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's there can be such a disconnect coming from the cattle side of what we're actually producing in beef to the beef side of the different cuts, where they come from. Really, the best way to cook them. Yes, yeah. In general. I mean, honestly, I've talked to ranchers that they may not exactly know what came out of that critter that they harvested and how best to cook it, and then had a bad eating experience, and it makes a huge difference. We could do everything right on the live cattle side and producing this product that could be taken away pretty quickly on the cooking side. So it's instrumental what you're doing, Eddy, and then the education to our consumers on how to get the best out of that beef.
So I would say know your butcher. There are good butchers and bad butchers. Know where it comes from, for sure, because that's your product. But know your butcher, because different cuts of beef are going to behave differently on the grill, and you're going to grill them differently. No question about it. You're right. So when it comes down to grilling, you are going to either do direct hot and fast, and those are for all your thin cuts. You are going to do two-zone cooking, which, or they also call it reverse sear cooking. And basically what you do is you're setting up your grill where you have one side of your grill that is not getting that direct flame or that direct heat. And then you have the other side of your grill, which is getting that direct flame or that direct heat. You really want to cook your beef to temperature. Because the truth is that doing a low and slow or doing a reverse sear is going to get that even cook. If you take a thick cut of beef and you throw it on the grill and you sear the heck of it on both sides, you'll get that proper sear on the outsides, but the interior is going to be Pittsburgh blue. Some people like it, some people don't. But the truth is that you're going to be able to have a lot more control if you do a reverse sear on a thicker cut of meat. So trick is indirect heat. I like to then pull it off the grill once I've reached my temperature for my guest or myself. I like to let it rest for 10 minutes. And then as it's resting, I make sure that the other side's piping hot. And then I get a good sear on both sides. When I'm getting that sear, I'm really trying to achieve char. The fact is that I want that golden crispy sear on it, so I try to disrupt it as little as possible. Let it sit for the time that it needs to, let it sear, and only flip it once. By doing that, I'm going to achieve that nice crispy crust sear and then that juicy interior to that meat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, Eddy, to maybe highlight for our listeners of the bringing meat up to temperature to begin with prior to cooking. This is out of my wheelhouse. These are just things that I'm repeating. So, you tell me if I'm in far left field here. Jeff's definitely more the cook in the family, not me. The girls, normally anytime I grill, they're like, when's daddy going to be home? Because, we need our steak how we like it. But anyways, the bringing that steak up to temperature prior to cooking, and then the time to rest, and some of those like very nuanced things of grilling that when somebody's starting out may not know. Can you highlight those things and like why they're so important?
Sure. So it's all about cooking to temperature. There are two different ways to do it. There's doing it by touch. And really what it comes down to, as far as that meat, when you're cooking on the grill, it's the firmness of that meat. Is it soft? Is it spongy? Well, then it's medium rare. Is it hard? Then it's well done, which we don't do in our house. But some people do, and I respect that. If I were to give good advice, the truth is that most folks should use a temperature gauge. Cook to temperature, don't cook to time. Understand where you're at as far as your journey when you're eating red meat. A lot of people in the beginning will be a little squeamish if it's a little rare. Trust me when I say this, that's where the flavor is. And a big myth or misconception that a lot of folks have when they're cooking or grilling is when they pull that red meat off and they place it on the plate, you'll see a little bit of red liquid that's on the plate. Everybody, that's not blood. It's myoglobin. And that the fact is what makes your meat juicy and tasty. So they drain all the blood out of that beef at the time that they harvest that animal. That is not blood, and it shouldn't make you squeamish. Would you, as a producer of beef, would you agree?
Absolutely. Maybe a little louder for the people in the back. That is a common misperception about that when you're cooking your meat. The fact that is blood, and you're exactly right. The blood was gone when that animal was harvested. That's basically the liquid, the myoglobin, the part that makes it juicy. So the more we have that, the better off we are.
Yeah. So if you're starting your journey of red meat, and if you prefer to have it well done, I would say try, at least experiment scaling it back and allowing for that meat to be juicy and tender, as opposed to well done. And I respect everybody as far as their position, and I'll cook to taste. However, if I were to position you for a level of greater taste and expectations, go more towards the medium or medium rare. So yeah.
Yeah, very good. So you touched a little bit on the heat side of grilling. I think this is something that we could go really far down this rabbit trail on, like mastering your heat, especially with open fire grilling. What tips can you give? If you're talking to somebody and they're just starting out this journey, like where would you start them?
Okay. Uh, Again, quality cuts to begin with are going to be your best first step. Second, understand your flavor profiles. If you go into the grocery store, or if you go to buy spices, read the labels on your spices. Unfortunately, when you open up that spice and you look at that spice container, so they list ingredients based on the volume of material that they put inside of that product. And if you read that ingredients list, and if one of the 2 or 3 or 4 items that they have in there are sugar, and if you are grilling hot and fast, I want you to know that once that flame hits that sugar, you're going to get an acrid, nasty taste to your cut. So know how you're going to spice it before you begin. From my vantage point, let the meat speak to itself. Use simple spices. Use pepper, use salt, use paprika, use garlic powder, use onion powder. But I would stay away from sugars on your fast cooks. Anytime you're going to cook a reverse sear, or anytime you're going to cook a fast grill, stay away from sugars. So that would be a good tip.
That's a good tip. So do you reserve that for low and slow
Or,
marinades?
or finishes. So
Okay.
cook your meat first. As you're cooking your meat, build your glazes, build your flavor, and then when you're finishing, just before you're finishing your cook, then glaze your meat. And by doing that, you'll hit your flavor profiles that you're actually intending to hit. If you do that during a hot cook, you will not achieve the flavor profile that you're looking for. Fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Solid.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, you will make mistakes. It happens. Sometimes they're costly. Most things in life, whether it be cooking or anything else, it's the mistakes that make us remember. And we say to ourselves, well, I'm not going to make that happen again. However, when you do it, it's kind of like a little bit of a badge of courage. And then you learn about patience, and then you're able to get into the fun part, which is experimenting. Fact is that this world is a huge stage of culinary experiments, and you can go down so many different rabbit holes, different cultures, different way things are cooked, and get to experiment in worldly cuisine from your own backyard. If you want to step into that, or if you want to experiment, it's there. So
Yeah, I love that it is an experience too. The
yeah.
culinary side, and then the people that you're surrounding yourself and sharing that with, like, is a true experience. And that's, when we started this endeavor, I've always loved beef. I mean, grew up a rancher's daughter. That's what we ate. That was just normal, because if my dad tried to cook chicken, he would burn it half to death because he wanted to make sure it wasn't going to kill him.
Yeah.
So, that's a little side note, but he's very good at cooking beef. The rest of the proteins, yep, that wasn't going to happen. So, naturally, I had a little bit more of an affinity for beef. But it was more of that thought process of bringing people around the table to that really high quality protein, connecting back to it, connecting with the people that are sitting across from you, and truly having that memorable experience. And that's what's really cool about what you do, Eddy, is like that's helping create that, is like having that really great experience around a really great steak or whatever cut that may be. But that's something that I think we could even highlight even more. I'd love to hear your thoughts on like your most fun, maybe recent experiment. Your culinary experience. What would that be?
Ooh. So that would be difficult to answer, to be honest with you. uh, Again, I like worldly cuisines. There are times out there that I just want to eat a damn good burger, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. But I enjoy dabbling in food that's from South America. I love Peruvian food. That's something that I absolutely love to do. I love to cook Asian cuisine. And sometimes I like to have a little bit of fusion where you mix some of the cultures up and come up with something your own. I can't say that I actually have a specific favorite. I mean, other than having a juicy steak or a juicy burger that just can't be beat. It has to have the right fat content, and it has to be the right cut. But man, when you nail it, you nailed it. And I really like to have the meat taste for itself. But as far as cooking specific dishes, I cook different meals a couple times a week that are always from different areas, and it would be really hard for me to say which is my true favorite, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. When you have that vast of a array, it'd probably be hard to pick. Something that my mind always goes to from trying to talk to anybody that's listening to this podcast. Maybe they're expert griller, maybe they're not. Like where's the best place to start with that? I guess I can give you my thought process of when I loaded up and I went to college, and most of the time I really hadn't cooked much. My family had cooked, and we've enjoyed great beef, but I remember loading up my little grill and being really proud of myself because I'm like, I at least know that I can put whatever I want to on this thing, especially protein, and be well fed. So to me, it was kind of a simplistic thought of like, I have fire and I have protein and I am set. But just thinking about from, a common consumer's perspective, maybe they don't have, a big green egg. Maybe they don't have a big grill. They don't have a lot of place to be able to grill outside. What's your advice to make it as like kind of simple as possible, whether it's maybe starting with a specific cut or a technique that they can take home and be like, yeah, this is a good place to kind of dip my toe in the water?
So if I were going to say your journey, first you're going to do direct grilling, anything that's going to be high heat and something that's going to be quick to cook. Again, burgers are very forgiving. Everybody should start off with burgers. And as far as burgers go, don't start with frozen burgers at all. You've got to make sure that you can grill them at a reasonable temperature. Doesn't necessarily have to be room temperature, but you want to have it. You don't want to be sticking frozen batties on the grill. Once you get past the direct grilling point, and so let's say that when you're out there grilling, nothing frozen, you want it fresh, you want high heat. When you're cooking it, let it start to learn patience with your cook. That meat is going to release on its own from the grill. Don't force it, learn patience. Contrary to popular belief, a dirty grill does not add flavor. Keep your grill clean. It's and keep it oiled, and make sure that you're having repetition in your cook. If you come out to your grill and if it's not the same way every day, you're not going to get the same results out of your cook. So that's what I do, is start off first with my quick and easy fast grills. Moving past that point, you would start learning how to do it indirect. Truth is indirect's pretty darn easy. It's just learning how to make sure to manage your fire. Let your coals or let your charcoal burn down to a point where you're not having that flame touching your food. Control your heat. Learn about fire first. Cook your meat to temperature, work with thicker cuts, and then once you reach the temperature, again, instead of using your hand as far as the firmness of the meat, utilize a thermometer, a digital thermometer. That way you know what you've achieved. Hit your desired temperature, let it rest. You got to let that meat reconstitute, letting the juices come back to center, and then sear it in to lock it and get that char to get that flavor. The last step is doing the low and slows. And the funny part about it is everybody tends to start there first, and it is absolutely the hardest cooks to do. Your roasts and your briskets. Everybody who comes to me, they're like, hey, I want to cook a brisket. Truth is that's an extremely hard cut to cook. That takes a long time to master. And it's always everybody's first try of the shoot. So cooking them is not hard. It really isn't. But it is a game of patience. And I can tell you that no two cuts cook the same. That I can guarantee. That is an extreme game of patience, and that is also understanding your spices when it comes down to a low and slow cook. Your briskets. Really what's going to make that happen for you is you're wanting to achieve a great. So you're stripping off those large chunks of fat that aren't going to render, and you are cooking it low and slow, and you're making sure to monitor that temperature, that it remains low and slow for hours. You are cooking it at a temperature of 225 to 250 degrees until it reaches an internal temperature of 165. The spices that you've utilized are your salts, your peppers, some paprika, some garlic, simple stuff, because you really want that meat to have its pronounced flavor. A lot of folks, when they are cooking that brisket, will utilize saran wrap to wrap around their brisket. I wouldn't advise that. You're working your tail off to get that perfect finish, and that perfect finish you're trying to hit is that crust on that meat. And if you use foil, oftentimes what will happen is it will steam the meat, and it'll put moisture in that meat. And then when you open up that foil, you'll find that it actually steamed off or removed that bark that you were working so hard to achieve. So my recommendation would be to utilize butcher's paper to wrap your meat. By doing that, it will allow for it to breathe, and it'll allow you to maintain your crust. With briskets, unlike steaks, where you allow for it to rest or tri-tips or the other larger cuts of meat, where you can have it reconstitute within 10 minutes, brisket, you're going to let that sit for a couple of hours to reconstitute. So there's the low and slow aspect to barbecue, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. You touched on a couple things that I'd like you to dive into a little bit, Eddy. So knowing your cut, of course, knowing your source, knowing more how that cut is going to cook. That's something that, we've had to have quite a few conversations with people around, because we do dry age everything. So within that, we do have more water loss than, say, if somebody goes to the grocery store and buys a steak and goes to cook it. Could you touch on that as far as, cooking times, what to look for, maybe some tips, and the fact that if you're utilizing a dry age product, specifically from us, but just in general, if something's dry age, you do already have that moisture loss and a little more concentration. So inherently, it is going to cook differently. Do you mind touching on that?
Agreed. So, the benefit of having dry aged meat is you're going to have a more pronounced flavor. That's a fact. When cooking meat, if you're trying to achieve a proper sear, you actually want your meat to be dry. You don't want it to be moist. So whatever protein that you're cooking with, whether it be chicken or pork or steak or beef, you want to pat it dry. You do. Having a dry finish on your protein, and then when you place it on that grill, depending on, again, if you're doing a hot fast sear, a reverse sear, or a low and slow, any type of moisture on that surface is creating steam, and the drier you have it, the better sear you're going to get on that cut of beef, if that makes sense. Yeah. As far as my cooking techniques, whether it be dry aged or not dry aged, I can't say that I truly separate that as far as my techniques. I gear it more towards the thickness of that cut. I know the flavor profile is going to be a lot better if it's dry aged, and it's going to be a lot more pronounced or condensed. But as far as beef goes, it really doesn't change my method of cooking, whether it's dry aged or not, because ultimately I'm trying to achieve either that 125 degrees for the medium rare or what have you, and I cook to temp, and that's how that goes. So
yeah. Have you just out of curiosity, have you noticed a difference in potentially cooking time, etc., when you have something that's dry aged comparatively, especially at high heat?
Honestly, I can't say it's that much of a significant difference. I will tell you that cooking grass-fed's harder than cooking non-grass-fed beef. It's you definitely have to pay more attention to your cook. It's not as forgiving, but at the end of the day, is it a better cook? Yes, I would say so. It depends on what you're in the mood for. I'm also a hunter, so I can tell you the hardest cuts of meat to cut or to cook are wild game, because there's no fat. Fat's where the flavor is, and fat is where the forgiveness is when it comes to grilling your meats. So unfortunately, I'm not as educated as far as what that fat content is. My education is at looking at it, looking at the marbling of the meat, and saying, hey, that looks like a great cut. That looks appetizing to me, and I feel that I'm going to get good results on it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to stand and say that I know definitively what one is versus the other. When it comes down to grilling beef, it really comes down to the thickness of the cut, which really dictates how I'm going to cook it.
Those are two really good quotes: is fat is flavor and fat is forgiveness. That's solid, Eddy. I like it.
Truth.
Truth, for sure. So, Eddy, do you have go-to recipes? Things that you're like, man, these are kind of my staples that you want to share with our listeners.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. That if I were a dying man, if I said, what is my last meal that I'm going to ever eat? It's going to be a hamburger. I'm telling you right now, it is a 80-20 hamburger. And if I can get it to 70-30, I'll go there. But the fact is that I want that coarse ground hamburger where I get that perfect sear and that perfect crunchiness. And then as far as building my burger, I can build it any way that I want. But if I were going to die before anything else, That's my last meal is that hamburger or cheeseburger. To be honest with you, I'm a
Yeah.
man of simple taste when it comes down to what that final meal would be. Can I cook anything? Absolutely, anything you can put your mind to, I can make happen. But that juicy hamburger is always a win for me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's during the week, it's like anything hamburger related. Of course, you can make a meal out of it, but I would just as soon put it on the grill and just have a hamburger. Yeah, I mean, I'll still put cheese on it because I do like cheese too, but that's definitely more my go-to. And I have less of a propensity to screw up a hamburger than I would a steak. So
Go with what you know.
yes, yeah, no, that's a true story. So
But if you're going to delve into other cuts, know your cuts. So um, if if you don't know your cuts and if you don't know how to properly prepare them, you're going to have a bad experience. I'll give you some examples. Uh, if you're going to cook a flat iron steak or a skirt steak, quick grills. Uh, you are going to get them on that grill and off the grill pretty quickly, but you best be cutting against the grain. If you cut with the grain and if you serve that to your guests, it is going to taste like leather. If you cut against the grain, it is going to be tender and delicious and amazing. Same thing goes with some of your other cuts, like a tri-tip cut. A tri-tip cut is a thicker cut, which you're going to reverse here. However, there are 3 different types of ways that that grain is going to go on that meat, and you have to know your meat in advance when you after you can do the most amazing job creating spice levels and flavor profiles. You can do the most amazing job uh, grilling that meat and getting it to the perfect temperature and getting that perfect char on the outside of it. But when you finish, if you don't cut against the grain, every guest is not going to be happy. So that would be another pro tip.
as a pro tip.
Uh, so
That is a solid pro tip. For everybody that didn't hear that, cut against the grain. Pro tip from Eddy Frisk. What other pro tips, Eddy?
oof, um, I'm befuddled. I don't know. I'm sorry. Um, I would say explore, push your boundaries. Um, go through YouTube, go through recipe books. There are so many different resources out there. I came from a generation where we had to hike to either you knew somebody, you had to make a phone call to getting the information that you needed, or you had to hike it to a library to get some books for information. So I'm old school. I think that this is the most amazing generation that you could possibly be in as far as information. Some things I don't like, but there are, as far as information, holy smokes. Uh, there is so much interaction that you can have either through social media on several different platforms to YouTube to what have you, where not only are you able to see how things are done step by step, but you're able to interact with that person who made that food. You can send them a DM saying, hey, you sent out this recipe. I tried this recipe. I had these mistakes or errors that took place. Can you give me some guidance? Um, as far as the barbecue community out there online, there are some of the most amazing people out there. Genuine, easy to reach, and a valuable resource to everybody. And again, if anybody's listening to me, please view my page. And I have Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and what have you. The fact is that I post all of my recipes. I share them freely with everyone. Uh, I want you to experiment with those recipes, and I want you to reach out if you have questions. Because the fact is I want you to have a good experience. Um, this is an amazing era that we live in right now, where we can truly look at how we are right now. You're in Akron. Holy smokes, that is a jog. That's a distance, and here we are talking, communicating, socializing. How amazing is that? So
It is very cool. And Eddy, we will also, and for all of our listeners, we'll include all of your information in the show notes so everybody knows how to easily find you, because you do have some amazing recipes. I mean, between you and your wife, like, you guys elevate the experience of backyard barbecue. And I think that's such a fun thing to just really experience that, with incredible humans too. But it's that human connection along with the incredible food that does make for an unforgettable experience.
well, thank you. Humbled. Appreciate that.
Yes. Well,
So,
we appreciate you taking the time. We've also, we've had the pleasure of being hosted at your house and partaking in some incredible food that both you and your wife have put on the table, and the camaraderie. So, any closing thoughts, tips for our listeners before we close out, Eddy?
again, uh, very simply, know where your know where your product comes from. Uh, Hands down, farm to table is always the best way to go. Know your source. After you know your source, know your butcher. Get to know your cuts. They're different, and they'll give you different experiences. And then step outside of your boundaries. Wherever your boundaries may be, know that you can experience so much more. And you're going to get so much more gratitude, and you're going to have such a better experience from doing it yourself. And I'm a big believer in experiences, and build your experiences. So
Absolutely. I mean, even recently, we figured out how to use some additional parts of the animal that we weren't fully utilizing. And, speaking from myself personally, that's incredibly gratifying to continue to honor that animal's life, to use the entire animal in the most efficient, honoring way that we can. And, with partnering with people like you, Eddy, we can figure out more ways to use all parts and have an incredible experience with it. Like, I just had some really great tongue tacos, which I never thought I would say that. But, there is so many different ways that we can utilize the entire animal, have a great experience, have shared experiences, and connect with really great people. And that's part of what fuels us. So thank you, Eddy.
your operation is amazing. Your family is amazing, and it's definitely a true testament to people who actually care about the product that they put out there. So I really appreciate having been able to have that experience for sure. So
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate it as well, Eddy. So, like I said, we will include everything in the show notes. We're going to go ahead and close out. So, in closing, at Steak Bites, we're dedicated to all things tasteful and fulfilling, from the beef itself to the moments that we share around the table. Cooking a steak isn't just about throwing it on the grill, it's about precision, patience, and passion, much like the way we approach everything in life. The perfect sear, the time to rest, and the final slice all contribute to an unforgettable experience. So, whether you're firing up the grill or sitting down for your next meal, remember, be intentional, savor the process, and enjoy every bite. Thank you for tuning in to Steak Bites. Till next time.